The filibuster. The filibuster is a legislative tactic used in the United States Senate to prevent and delay legislative action from happening. The filibuster effectively requires 60, not 51, not the majority of the 100 senators, to get legislation through. The filibuster requires a 60 vote threshold in lieu of 51 votes. It requires 60 votes to invoke cloture, that's the legislative term, to end debate and proceed to a final vote. Now, there's two exceptions to invoking cloture. Two exceptions that only require 51 votes, not the 60 vote threshold. The first is anything related to a budget. Anything that's related to a budget is called budget reconciliation and does not require the 60 votes. It only requires 51 votes. The second exception to the 60 vote threshold is presidential nominations. In 2013, Democrats, frustrated by Senate Republicans, invoked what they called the nuclear option, effectively requiring the 60 vote threshold to go down to the 51 vote threshold for presidential nominees, for cabinet posts, and federal judges. President Obama and Senator Harry Reid, the majority leader at the time, were frustrated with Mitch McConnell for blocking all of their nominations. And so they changed the rule, saying that they only needed a 51 simple majority to get your nominations passed. Now, in 2017, Republicans under Mitch McConnell, then having the majority, expanded that threshold to Supreme Court justices after Democrats in this case blocked Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch from going to the Supreme Court. And so Mitch McConnell expanded the threshold to the 51 threshold requirement to all presidential nominations, including Supreme Court justices. So there's two exceptions where you only need the 51 vote majority, which is budget reconciliation and federal nominations. Otherwise, you need the 60 vote threshold to get anything done in the Senate. There are benefits to this. The most important benefit to this is that it requires bipartisanship. If you need 60 votes to get anything through, legislation that comes out of the Senate will be bipartisan in nature. It's very hard to get a 60 vote majority. And so most legislation will require both Democrats and Republicans working together to get something done. And in our very divided times, our 50-50 divided country, this is the one branch of government that is required to work together to get things done. It also prevents the tyranny of a majority from doing whatever they want, and it promotes stability. Unlike the House of Representatives, where it can pass laws every time power changes hands from Democrats to Republicans or Republicans to Democrats, the Senate has this stability. And so you don't have sweeping legislative changes every time a new election takes place. It also allows extended debates. So it ensures that all perspectives are heard and debated thoroughly before legislation is passed. The downsides of the filibuster is that it obstructs legislation. The filibuster is used to block bills indefinitely, even those that have a majority of support, leading to gridlock and preventing necessary policy changes. It also reduces accountability. So a majority with less than 60 votes can easily say that they will not pass their agenda that they were elected on because they don't have the 60 vote threshold. They can use the filibuster as an excuse to actually get legislation done. The biggest downside is that in our urgent times, as we deal with urgent problems like climate change or healthcare inequalities or voting rights, we're unable to solve the big problems quickly because we have the filibuster that requires a 60 vote threshold. The big challenging issues of the day don't urgently get addressed because of the filibuster itself. So there's pros and cons to keeping the filibuster or getting rid of the filibuster. But the biggest benefit of the filibuster is that this is the one thing that requires bipartisanship. And the downside is the one thing that really prevents big things from happening. And so you see Democrats running on one platform and Republicans running on a different platform, and neither, when they get to power, when they're actually in control of the Senate, are capable of getting things through. They're incapable of actually passing the laws that they were elected for. And so there's really pros and cons to the filibuster, but in our divided times, this is one of the big debates of how our government ought to function.